Alright, quite a few of you asked me to make a Herald guide to farm the Mad King's Labyrinth, so here it is. We're going to be making the lowest intensity build this game has ever seen. All you'll need to do is activate 2 facets in Glint and follow the Zerg around. Everything else is optional. This build literally works without gear. Although I would recommend you to equip some, because Steve's attacks will send you straight to the hospital if you don't. So please don't copy what I'm doing here and equip some gear. I'm simply showcasing this so that you have proof that you don't need to engage any enemies yourself to get kill credit, as long as you're providing buffs to your allies. This is also a great time to discuss the 2 most common groups you'll join when you're farming the lab. Some groups will choose to open all the doors and thus kill all bosses as well as regular enemies, while other groups might choose to focus on green doors only, minimizing the time they spend on bosses and trying to maximize the amount of trick-or-treat bags they can farm. This Herald build will quite literally be a boon to both types of groups. Because we don't need to actually tag enemies ourselves, we could choose to run defensive gear, no gear, or actually full offensive gear, as long as you have the self-control to not tag any regular mobs. I'm mentioning this because having Heralds decked out in full offensive gear would mean that you can burst down bosses fast enough if you're choosing to open all doors. And that's why I'll provide you with 2 different builds. One that focuses purely on buffing teammates, condition cleanses and healing, and one that does the same to a lesser extent, but will allow you to bring Berserker's gear to kill bosses faster. Both builds will use the same Herald trait line, while the defensive one will opt for Retribution and Salvation, and the offensive one for Devastation and Invocation. So let's start with Herald, as this will be our common denominator. We'll want Rising Momentum, which will grant us a 5% increase in movement speed for each point of upkeep currently in use. You'll see me mostly using 5 points of upkeep so that my energy remains stable, but I still get to run 25% faster. You could use way more points of upkeep and choose for a more active playstyle too. But I like to keep things simple. I'll discuss which facets you want to activate later on in the video. Our second trait is Hardening Persistence, which provides you with some damage reduction and allows your shield skills to cleanse conditions. We're actually taking this trait to avoid shared empowerment because we do not want to grant might to our allies. That would defeat the whole purpose of reducing everyone's damage so that the whole group gets to tag enemies. Our Grandmaster trait will heal allies when granting them boons, as well as provide them with quickness as long as we have 6 points of upkeep. For our defensive setup, we want to take Retribution, which reduces the damage we take even further and grants us resolution every time we dodge, as well as some healing. This trait line is flexible and can be changed out, but I like the extra survivability if we're not attacking enemies anyway. The Salvation trait line will let you cleanse conditions on allies whenever you dodge, which is a hoot and a half when combined with a Sigil of Stamina. Every time an enemy that you get a kill credit for dies, you will refill all of your dodges. So you'll basically be perma-dodging throughout the whole map, all the while healing and cleansing conditions on your allies. Both other traits are flexible, so I opted for some extra protection when I'm cleansing conditions and some added healing for our allies. For this build, you'll want to pick Glint and Ventari. When running around, activate your healing facet as well as your elite facet. This will put you into an energy neutral state, meaning you'll stay at 50 energy indefinitely. I found that the movement speed from our Herald trait is more than enough to keep up with a group like this. If you're fighting the odd boss, prioritize facets that grant Might and Fury, as this will increase you and your allies' damage. Ventari is a nice backup with a lot of heals, condition cleanses and a bubble that you can sustain for quite some time that will block all projectiles. This can be particularly good on certain bosses that like to bombard you with candy corn. For our defensive build, we're running with Staff and a Mace shield combo. Staff 4 as well as both shield skills will cleanse conditions from yourself and your allies, while providing some great healing. And simply auto-attacking with your staff is usually enough to keep people alive. As I already mentioned, put a Sigil of Stamina in both sets so that you can dodge roll through the lab, or dodge jump when you're an Asura, I guess, and a Sigil of Concentration in the other slot for some added boon duration. Stats and runes are up to you, really. I like Givers and Minstrels as these provide 0 offensive stats, and Runes of Radiance for some extra vitality and boon duration. But literally anything will work, or even equipping nothing, as long as you can dodge Steve's auto attacks. If you want to add some spice to your life and go full offense, invest in Devastation for a 20% damage increase when an enemy's HP is over 80% or under 50, as well as getting more power from might stacks. And into Invocation to increase your critical strike chance and another 10% damage increase whenever your health is above 75%. This setup will squeeze every ounce of damage out of your build and is best combined with Berserkers, Marauders or Dragon gear, and Runes of the Scholar, Dragon Hunter or any other offensive combo that you're willing to try out. We'll keep staff in one set, but we're gonna replace our mace and shield with a greatsword. When you're running around and you're letting your allies tag, equip staff for the odd condition cleanse, and swap to greatsword to lay down the pain on boss doors. I am trusting all of you with this second build. Do not attack any regular enemies, let your allies do the tagging, and simply pulse boons in glint. As with the previous build, pulse your healing and elite facets when you're running around, and swap to fury and might whenever you're fighting bosses. Instead of Ventari, you want to pick up Shiro because impossible odds will vastly increase your damage output. That's literally the only skill you need to care about in Shiro, and it coincidentally also requires 6 pips of upkeep, meaning permanent quickness for everyone. That's it, you can be as passive as you want or as active as you want with this build. You'll get loot by simply keeping up with the group and ideally near the front. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to ask them down below and make sure you like, subscribe and let me know what other professions you want to see in the lab.